My parents met in the late 60s when my mom was a nurse and my dad was a medical student. They got married in 1973, and I came along later that year. My mom's family never liked my dad because he wasn't Zulu and couldn't speak the language, but they sure didn't mind his money. My mom stayed home to raise us kids, but what her family didn't know was that she was secretly studying. She turned out to be an incredible student, earning scholarships all the way to her PhD. Sadly, she passed away just 6 months before defending her thesis. As we grew up, my mom went back to work as a lecturer and started writing books. By the time I was in my mid-teens, she was earning 4 times what my dad made. We lived a comfortable life, private schools, luxury holidays, nice clothes, big house, fancy cars. My parents even paid for our university education in full. Despite all this, my mom never forgot her roots. She was always sending money back to her family, paying for their education, letting them stay in her rental properties. You name it, she did it for them. Now, in my country, we have these things called funeral policies. You pay a small amount monthly to insure someone, and when they pass away, you can claim the benefit to help with funeral costs. Many of my mom's family members had taken out these policies on her, using the very money she gave them to pay for the premiums. So when my mom suddenly passed away from an asthma attack at 63, we told everyone. That's when the circus began. First, they called asking for gas money to come to the funeral. They lived 6 to 12 hours away by car, but still. Then they showed up empty-handed, expecting to be waited on hand and foot. They didn't contribute a single cent to the funeral costs, which is customary in our culture. We wanted to wait for my sister to arrive from the UK before setting the funeral date. When we finally set it for a Tuesday, they had the audacity to accuse us of choosing a weekday so they couldn't attend. I tried to explain to them that we all had to take leave from work for this, and it wasn't just about their convenience. My aunt, who I'll call Karen, insisted that funerals were supposed to be on weekends and accused us of doing this on purpose. While we were busy making arrangements, my aunts ransacked my mom's room and helped themselves to her clothes, shoes, and jewelry. They even stole her wedding rings. On the day of the funeral, my uncles and cousins got drunk and started fighting. My grieving dad had to stitch them up. Then they had the nerve to comment on the cost of the casket and tombstone. Karen complained about the expensive casket, saying it was just going in the ground anyway. My uncle chimed in, calling the tombstone a waste of money. At this point, I lost it. I was running on no sleep, grieving, and trying to take care of my babies. I grabbed a handful of coins and threw it at them, sarcastically telling them it was their contribution back, even though they hadn't made one. They even complained about us using catering instead of cooking at home, completely ignoring that it was my mother's wish. The final straw was when they asked for gas money to give back home. Now here's where it gets interesting. To claim from those funeral policies they'd taken out on my mom, they needed a police-certified death certificate. When they were leaving, every single one of them asked for copies of the death certificate, claiming they needed it for bereavement leave from work. I gave them photocopies of the death certificate, but they weren't certified copies. When they insisted they needed certified copies, my dad and I calmly explained that for work purposes, regular copies would suffice. We assured them that regular copies were enough for bereavement leave. They left not realizing what we'd done. None of them were ever able to claim from those policies because they couldn't get certified copies. And they couldn't get original death certificates either because we never gave them copies of my mom's ID, which is needed to obtain an original certificate. Later, when Karen called to complain about needing the money from the policies, I reminded her that these were the same policies they had paid for with the money my mom gave them. I told her it was tough luck. The tap of unending money from my mom shut down hard. No more freeloading off her generosity. I hope they enjoyed selling her clothes and jewelry because that's the last thing they'll ever get from our family. We honored my mom's memory the way she would have wanted, without letting these greedy relatives tarnish it. It wasn't the funeral I expected, but it certainly taught me a lot about who really cared about my mom and who was just in it for the money. My dad's been a cop for over 20 years, and he's seen it all. This one incident happened last week, and it's a doozy. It was a typical Tuesday afternoon when my dad got called to a fast food joint downtown. The initial report was just about a drunk woman causing a disturbance, but it turned out to be way more than that. When my dad arrived with his partner, they found absolute chaos. There was a woman standing on the counter, screaming and throwing food at the employees. She was clearly out of her mind on something much stronger than alcohol. My dad tried to calm the situation, asking the woman to step down from the counter, but she ignored him completely. The woman then started waving a pocket knife around, threatening to stab everyone. That's when things got really intense. My dad ordered her to drop the weapon. Instead of complying, the woman grabbed a handful of cash from the register and threw it at my dad's partner. Then she tried to spit at them, but thankfully missed. My dad didn't waste any time. He pulled out his taser and approached the woman cautiously. Just as he was about to fire, the store manager came out of nowhere and landed an uppercut on the woman's jaw, sending her crashing to the floor. My dad seized the opportunity to disarm her, but she wasn't done fighting. She bit down hard on his arm. Thank God for those long-sleeved uniforms. My dad had no choice but to tase her at that point. This woman was like the Energizer Bunny of chaos. She made a beeline for the manager, trying to bite his leg. My dad had to grab her by the throat and slide her back. Finally, after another tasing and some struggle, they managed to get her in handcuffs. But the drama wasn't over yet. Enter Karen, the woman's mother. She burst into the store, screaming at the top of her lungs. She hurled insults at the officers, calling them pigs and threatening to sue everyone. She even started throwing racial slurs at one of the employees, which is when my dad stepped in. My dad tried to calm Karen down, asking her to step outside, but Karen wasn't having it. She accused one of the employees of harassing her, which my dad quickly shut down by pointing out the cameras everywhere. While my dad was dealing with Karen, her daughter managed to break free and knock over a gift card stand, nearly hitting a child in the process. It was like trying to wrangle two wild animals at once. Karen started yelling about her daughter being assaulted. My dad had to explain that her daughter was resisting arrest and endangering others. He warned Karen that she needed to leave or she'd be arrested too. Karen stubbornly refused to budge. That's when my dad had to physically remove Karen from the store. Meanwhile, his partner was struggling to control the daughter, who was still kicking and screaming. Just when they thought they had things under control, Karen snuck back in and tried to choke my dad's partner from behind. My dad had to kick her away to free his partner. It took the help of the store manager and another officer to finally subdue both women. They were both arrested and taken to the station in separate cars. On the way to the station, Karen kept bashing her head against the seat, claiming she couldn't breathe. When they arrived, she collapsed dramatically, insisting she had brain damage. My dad's partner didn't buy it for a second. He reminded Karen that everything was recorded on their body cams, suggesting she save her act for her lawyer. Both women faced multiple charges, including assault, resisting arrest, and destruction of property. The daughter also got hit with drug possession charges. My dad says it was one of the craziest shifts he's ever had. He's seen entitled people before, but this mother-daughter duo took it to a whole new level. It just goes to show you never know what kind of chaos you might encounter on any given day in law enforcement. I've been coming to this little beach town in southern Spain for over 30 years now. My wife and we bought a holiday home here back when our kids were just tiny tots. Now they're all grown up with families of their own, but we still make it down here for a few weeks every year. There's this amazing beach restaurant nearby that we absolutely love. We go there for lunch almost every other day when we're in town. I'm not exaggerating when I say we've probably eaten there over 500 times by now. We've seen the place change hands from the original owners, this sweet elderly couple, to their kids about 20 years ago. Now it's run by their 2 sons and daughter. We've watched them grow up, get married, have kids of their own. They're like family to us at this point, so yesterday we head down for our first visit this year. I threw on a bright orange polo shirt and some navy blue shorts, comfy beach attire, right? Little did I know I was about to become part of the staff, at least in appearance. We walk in and immediately the 2 brothers start cracking up. Turns out I'm dressed exactly like their staff uniform for this year. We're all having a good laugh about it, hugging and catching up, when the older brother, let's call him the manager, gets this mischievous look in his eye and disappears into the kitchen. Next thing I know, this new waitress comes storming out. She's young, probably in her early 20s, and boy does she look annoyed. She marches right up to our table and starts laying into me. The waitress loudly demanded that I get back to work immediately. She told me that the boss had told her about my laziness and that I was on my final warning. Her voice was stern and authoritative. I tried to explain that there was a misunderstanding and that I didn't work there. My tone was confused and slightly defensive. The waitress wasn't having any of it. She accused me of making excuses and pointed out that I was wearing the uniform. She threatened to report me if I didn't stop slacking off and get to work. Her voice was getting louder and more frustrated. I attempted to explain again, mentioning that I was a customer who had been coming to the restaurant for years. My voice was calm but insistent. The waitress cut me off, refusing to listen to what she called my excuses. She stressed that the lunch rush was about to start and they needed all staff working. Her tone was urgent and commanding. By this point, all the other customers are watching, some trying to hide their smiles, others openly chuckling. I'm caught between wanting to laugh and feeling a bit embarrassed for this poor girl who's clearly been set up. Just as I'm about to explain the situation again, the manager comes back out. He's got the biggest grin on his face. The manager intervened, telling the waitress to calm down. He gestured for her to come closer, indicating he had something to explain to her. His voice was amused but kind. He pulls the waitress aside and I can see the exact moment it dawns on her. What's happened? Her face goes from confused to mortified in about 2 seconds flat. She turns back to me bright red and starts apologizing profusely. The waitress stammered out a series of apologies. She expressed her shock and embarrassment, trying to explain that she had misunderstood the situation based on what the manager had told her. Her words stumbled out in a rush, her face getting redder by the second. I reassured her that it was okay, complimenting her on the prank and her spirited approach to her job. My tone was warm and encouraging. The manager chimed in, confirming to the waitress that I was a good sport. He explained that my wife and I were longtime customers who had been coming to the restaurant longer than the waitress had been alive. His voice was filled with amusement and affection. We all had a good laugh about it after that. The waitress, turns out it was her first week on the job, was a bit sheepish at first, but she loosened up once she realized we weren't mad. The manager even threw in some free drinks to smooth things over, not that it was necessary. Well, I might just have to buy a few more orange polos. Who knows? Maybe next year I'll show up and ask for a job application, just to keep the joke going. After all, what's a beach vacation without a little harmless fun? My nightmare started when my wife discovered social media influencing during her maternity leave. At first it seemed harmless. She'd post cute pictures of our baby, share parenting tips, and connect with other moms. But as her follower count grew, so did her obsession. She quit her job to focus on her new career full-time, convinced she'd make it big. I tried to be supportive, but things got out of hand when she started monetizing every aspect of our baby's life. The final straw was this ridiculous pay-per-view event she planned for our child's first steps. My wife excitedly shared her idea to live stream our baby's first steps. When I responded with mild interest and questioned the need for a live stream, she enthusiastically explained her plan to charge viewers. I was shocked and asked if she really intended to make people pay to watch our baby walk. She confirmed this and added that she was also setting up VIP packages, including virtual meet and greets with the baby. This was our child, not some circus act. But my wife wouldn't listen to reason. She spent weeks promoting the event, promising her followers an unforgettable milestone moment. She even bought new camera equipment and redecorated our living room for the perfect backdrop. The day of the live stream arrived and our living room looked like a TV studio. My wife was in full makeup, cooing at our baby and urging them to walk. I sat off to the side feeling like I was trapped in some bizarre reality show. My wife sweetly encouraged our baby to walk, telling them that many people were waiting to see their first steps, but our baby, blissfully unaware of the pressure, was content to sit and play with their toys. As the minutes ticked by, I could see my wife getting more and more agitated. She whispered to me, asking why the baby wasn't walking, reminding me that we had promised everyone. I gently explained that the baby couldn't be forced, as they were just a baby. My wife then addressed the camera, assuring the viewers that the baby would start walking any second. After an hour of failed attempts and increasingly desperate encouragement, my wife finally ended the live stream. As soon as the camera was off, she exploded. She angrily complained about the money we had lost and the refunds we'd have to give. When I tried to reason with her, saying it wasn't the baby's fault and that the whole idea was bad from the start, she became even more upset. She insisted that this event was supposed to launch her career to the next level and accused our child of ruining it. I watched as she stormed off to her phone, furiously typing away. Later, I saw her social media posts blaming our one-year-old for sabotaging her career. It was the last straw for me. I confronted her, telling her she had gone too far and needed to take down the posts and apologize. She refused, claiming she was the victim. When I pointed out that she had tried to exploit our child for money and views, she defended herself, saying she was building a future for us and that I didn't understand social media. I countered that she didn't understand how to be a parent and insisted this had to stop. She then suggested finding another way, even considering hiring a baby stunt double for future streams. That was it. I couldn't stand by and watch this madness continue. I packed up some essentials, took our baby, and left to stay with my parents. I also contacted a lawyer to start divorce proceedings and fight for full custody. The aftermath was messy. My wife's followers turned against her when the story got out. She lost all her sponsorships and her social media accounts were suspended for child exploitation. It was a hard time, but I knew I'd made the right choice for our child. Now, a year later, I'm raising our toddler as a single dad. My ex-wife is in therapy, working on her social media addiction and trying to rebuild her life offline. And I'm just focused on giving our child a normal, happy childhood, away from the pressures of likes, views, and online fame.